Hi everyone! Today I've decided to give myself a little challenge and try to create open bezels out of these very intricate antique style frame molds. You can just see how detailed they are. These frame molds are actually fondant molds. They're meant for cake decorating, but today we'll be putting epoxy in them. So let's see if this can be done. So to help me make these open bezels happen, I'm going to use deep pour resin, and because of its thin viscosity, it should pick up all the details in these fondant molds with little to no air bubbles. I'm mixing up 3 ounces of resin. 3 ounces is way too much for these molds, but I want to keep it simple for myself. This way, I just need 2 ounces of part A and 1 ounce of part B. Simple, straightforward. If I was to do the actual amounts I need for these molds, I'd have to deal with quarter ounces and half ounces, and that's just a little too tricky to measure out and be precise. But I do have something fun up my sleeve to do with the rest of this resin, which you'll see later. Now, I did get a ton of air bubbles in this resin, but not to worry, I will be running it through my little vacuum chamber, but I'm dyeing this resin black. I'm going to dust my molds with a pigment powder, and backing it in black will make the pigment powder really stand out. Speaking of the pigment powder, I'm going to use one of these metallic powders. I'm using the antique gold, and I'm going to dust both molds with it and hope that it will mimic a real antique frame from back in the day. Be sure to let me know in the comments if you've tried using fondant molds in your resin crafts. But when it comes to fondant molds, as you can see, they're highly detailed. There's lots of nooks and crannies, lots of spots where air bubbles can get trapped, and this is why I'm calling this little project a challenge. The other night, while I was doing one of my late night, can't sleep Amazon scrolling sessions, looking for new resin molds, I came across these, and my first thought was, how cute would these be as an open bezel? So I added them to my cart, and here we are. But these molds, they're not really made for resin. For starters, these molds tend to be matte, so these frames won't be shiny. Though I think the matte will add a little bit of character to them. But these molds are for fondant and even polymer clay. They're meant to be used like a stamp to imprint. So this idea is either going to turn out lovely, or I'll end up with a disaster and frames covered with a ton of air bubbles. We'll see. Now, when it comes to my little fun idea of what to do with the rest of my epoxy, here's a little sneak peek. I went ahead and also dusted this gummy bear mold, and I'm going to make a golden bear. If only he was made out of real gold. But now that my resin is degassed, I'm going to go ahead and fill up these molds. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a process because I'm going to pour this resin in slowly from my popsicle stick to try and avoid getting air bubbles trapped. I will speed this part up, but I'm also doing it this way to try to have more control over the flow of the resin because I don't want to overfill it. I don't want resin above the edges of the details. I want the resin to be leveled, but I can already see that I'm failing at that, so I will have to go in with a pipette and remove some of this resin. I actually think that these molds aren't properly leveled, so there's that. But I'm just going to tap these against my desk like so, and hopefully it's going to help any air bubbles dislodge. Now I'm going to fill up this bear mold. I might actually have to prep another bear mold because I think I still have way too much resin here, but going back to the molds not being leveled, that's another downside of using fondant molds for resin. These frame molds aren't the first fondant molds I've used. Back when I first started doing resin, fondant molds were the first molds I bought, and I had the same issue. So keep that in mind if you do decide to try out fondant molds for resin. Anyways, this resin is now leveled with the edges of the molds. I've also propped up the mold in a couple of spots with pieces of paper towel to make it leveled as well. So now, to speed things up a bit, I'm actually going to use my new Resiner's curing machine to speed up the curing process. I won't go into the details of this machine too much because I know I'm really late to the party. I'm sure you all know it by now, but Resiners kindly sent me this to try out, and I thought this could be the perfect time since deep pour resin does take a couple of days to cure. So I'm going to take all these molds and place it in the tray. I did end up filling another gummy bear mold. I made this one silver, and now I'm going to adjust the settings. The base temperature for smaller molds is 140 F, but I'm actually going to lower it down to 100 F because I am a little nervous playing with the temperature for my resin. I usually keep my craft room around 74 to 76 F since that is the temperature the resin brands I use suggest. So making it almost 30 degrees hotter should speed up the curing a bit. As for the amount of time, I'm going to set it to the maximum, which is 4 hours. So it's been the 4 hours. I actually poured these tester pieces so that I could poke to keep track of the resin curing. And as you can see, it's still soft. So I'm going to cover this back up, put it on the same temperature, but this time I'm only going to do 3 hours. It's getting a little late and I don't want this running overnight, but the resin is curing faster. This resin would still be liquidy at this point if I didn't have the machine. Okay, it's the next morning. I've already gone ahead and demolded my silver bear because I wanted to make sure the resin was cured. And surprisingly, it's actually solid. It's kind of crazy. I've never been able to demold deep pour resin the next morning. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the gold one out too. Didn't these bears turn out cute? They're so fun. Now, before we get to demolding these frames, I want to quickly show you a useful tip on cleaning up your molds when you dust them with pigment powders. So you take a baby wipe, spray it with some isopropyl alcohol, and wipe it down while your pieces are still in the molds. This way, the powders don't spread into the mold cavities, making a bigger and trickier mess to clean up. Plus, you don't risk scuffing up the mold cavity. This is a tip I picked up from Claire's Crafty Corner, and it's been really useful. Some of these molds can be such a pain to clean up. For example, these ones because of all the intricate details. And just like that, most of the pigment is gone. So now I'm gonna go ahead and demold these little frames. They're still going to be a little bit bendy because the thinner the resin, the longer it takes to cure and solidify. But I'm really impressed that I'm demolding creations made with deep pour resin from yesterday. It's really cool. I poured this resin just after 12 p.m. Then I checked on it at 4:30ish after the 4 hours. Then I put it on for another 3 hours. And now, today, it's the next morning after 10, and here I am demolding it. It's awesome. Anyways, I'm going to let these sit a little longer to fully solidify so then I can finish these off. Okay, everyone, it's the next day after the last clip. I lost track of time yesterday, so it is what it is. These frames are fully solid now, so I'm going to go ahead and finish these off like I would a regular open bezel. I'm going to use these two images that I've cut down to size 1.5 inches in diameter, and these images are actually from washi tape rolls that I got a while back. So I'm just going to put these frames on some resin tape, and then I can build up my layers with UV resin. I'm going to do a total of 3 layers. The first is going to be a thin clear layer so that it fully seals the circle. For the second layer, I'm going to dye the UV resin white, and it's going to be the background for the washi tape. The white will give the images more contrast and make them stand out more. And as for the third layer, that one is going to be for the top coat / dome to seal in the washi tape. But what do we all think of these DIY-ish open bezels? I can see a few air bubbles, but I feel that it adds a little bit of character to them, don't you think? Makes them look a little bit more antique, no? If you're still here watching, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you're feeling inspired by this idea. My original plan wasn't to put washi tape images in the frames. I wanted to, and still want to put in photos of my family, but of course, to respect their privacy, I'm putting in these washi tapes. But I think these little frames would look so cute and even sophisticated with images of the people or pets you love. You could even put little real flowers and make it botanical. There's quite a few ideas. Let me know in the comments what you would put in these little frames if you were doing this project. So now comes the white layer, and I'm going to use this white alcohol ink. It's important to remember that when you're dyeing UV resin, you don't want to use opaque colors because it can stop your UV resin from properly curing, so it's best to use translucent colors. The good thing about doing an initial clear layer of UV resin is that it helps keep the resin trapped, so if there is a tiny amount that doesn't set properly, it won't make a mess. One mistake I've made that I just noticed is that I've made my clear layer a little thicker than I wanted it to be, which means this white layer of resin is going to be flushed with the frame. It's not a huge mistake, but I wanted there to be a little gap so then it looked like the images were actually in the frames, if that makes any sense, but it's okay. These will just be my tester pieces for when it comes time to make the ones I want with actual photos. As always, don't forget, when you're working with UV resin, always cure both sides of your pieces, especially if the UV resin is dyed. And there we go! These are fully cured now, so I can go ahead and put on these stickers. Another little tip for you if you're having trouble separating your stickers from the backing paper, use a little piece of tape, stick it to one side of your sticker, and use it to help pull them apart. I got this tip from one of you lovelies that commented it in a previous video, and again, it's been another tip that's been so helpful. Be sure to let me know which of these two pieces is your favorite at the end. But I'm really loving how the sticker that has the bow and purple flowers looks against the gold. The gold complements it so lovely. Looks very pretty. Now, before I put a top coat on these, I'm actually going to glue on the magnets first. This glue is a little runny and I want to make sure I don't get any residue on my top coat. And finally, I can go ahead and put on my top coat. I'm going to pour a little more resin than I need so the resin creates that dome look. And yeah! Oh, one final tip here is, after you pour your UV resin for a top coat, let the UV resin sit a couple of minutes so it settles. That way, it lessens the chance of you getting any fisheyes or blemishes on your pieces. Just be sure to cover your pieces so you don't get any particles on the resin while you wait. And there you have it, my friends. I'm really happy with how these two pieces turned out. I'm also thrilled that this little idea did work out, and I'm really excited to do this again, but with the photos of my family. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you've learned something. If you did, then please smash the like button. And if you'd like to see other resin videos I've done, then be sure to check out one of these. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!